You're still searching for that breakthrough that always feels just out of reach. What is your true life path, and how do you finally find it? Welcome to Say It Anyway, the podcast where we help you unlock the breakthrough you've been waiting for so your true life path can finally come to life. Each week, we share powerful practical tools you can use right now to start transforming your life. You'll hear raw, honest conversations with people from all walks of life, people who found their way forward and are here to share mindsets, strategies, and wisdom that help them get there. I'm James Ferrigno. I've helped people reconnect with their power for years. I'll guide you beyond surface level solutions into a deeper way of seeing the world, one rooted in connection, courage, and open-hearted dedication. This is your space to think differently, live boldly, and finally do the thing you were meant to do. Let's get started.
Welcome to Say It Anyway. I'm James Ferrigno, and today on Say It Anyway, we have as our guest Dave from Limitless Brave. He's a masculinity coach. Welcome, Dave.
Thanks, James. Thanks for having me, man. I appreciate it.
Yeah, no problem. Good to see you.
Likewise, good to see you.
Yeah. So I will just dive into it. So you've been helping men transform for 15 years plus. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Mm-hmm.
A long time.
So what led you to creating Limitless Brave?
So I guess we should start from the beginning.
Yeah. Give us some backstory.
I was a professional wingman in Washington, D.C. for a long time. Yeah, guys would basically pay me to go out with them and get them girls, and then I would take off once they had the girls. That's kind of where it all started. Kind of a funny little thing. I was doing it on the side, and it developed into more and more guys finding out about what I was doing, and then that led into coaching because guys wanted to do things on their own. They didn't necessarily want to pay me to go out with them all the time to get them girls. So that was the foray into coaching, and started coaching on my own, and ended up meeting a business partner a long time ago, back in 2013. And we had built out a global coaching company for men called the Fearless Man. And that business ended. And then I started Limitless Brave out on my own in a new direction, really focusing on masculinity as the core component of what I do, because my belief system is a well-rounded masculine guy can date very easily. He can have a successful career. He can live a great lifestyle, and he can do pretty well making money.
Okay. So I guess we'll get more into the details of that later. So why don't we go into smashing through barriers? What are some of the barriers in your own life that have shaped your work?
One of the biggest barriers that I surmounted personally was my fear of flying. I had a very, very traumatic experience flying. It wasn't anything bad, actually. And when I look back on the situation, I kind of laugh at myself, but had some like really turbulent, rough flights when I first started flying, and it developed this horrible fear. And I ended up not flying for 10 years. I would drive everywhere. And even going to the airport would make me anxious. So for the lifestyle that I live now, it's a very limiting way to live if you don't have access to an airplane. And so I had found this little self-help program for anxious flyers online. I bought that. I went through the process of it, and I found that the more I was educating myself about aviation and actually how safe it was, and that these stories that I was creating in my mind were not real, but made up, I started getting more curious about flying, and I took a flight out to California at that time, and it was a great flight, no big deal, smooth, super easy. Still had this nervousness, this anxiety, this distrust in aviation and flying. So at the time, I had a clothing company that I was running with my brother, and we were catering to the action sports world. So any kind of action sport, including base jumping. And I went to this event. I met a bunch of base jumpers, and I was like, this is a cool sport. How do you get into this? Well, they said, well, you got to start skydiving. So about a year later, I met some friends through that base jumping community who were big time skydivers. They took me on my first skydive. And from the second I left that plane, I realized that the fear of flying that I had wasn't the flying itself. It was one of the primal fears that we're born with, which is the fear of falling. And I had this very subconscious fear of falling when I was flying, but I didn't realize that. And it wasn't until I left that plane the first time that I realized, oh, that's what it was. And so I surmounted this subconscious fear that I didn't even really know what was there. And immediately went up and did another jump again and started a whole skydive career. And I've jumped all over the world. And that's probably one of the largest obstacles I've surmounted for myself because it was paralyzing. I mean, I had a panic attack one time on a plane. You know, now it's nothing to hang on the outside of a plane at 14,000 feet and jump off of it and call it fun. So yeah, that's one of the biggest things I've surmounted for sure. And
Yeah,
it's a really common phobia. It's a really common fear for a lot of people is flying.
yeah, it really is. Yeah, and that's a huge distance to travel from anxiety attack to being able to
Absolutely.
breathe.
Absolutely. And it changed the course of my life forever. Skydiving took me around the world. I mean, I got paid to go do jumps in Australia. I've jumped with the Prince of Jordan. Um, I've jumped all around the world. It's just taken me places that I never thought I'd go, and for reasons I never thought would be reasons to jump. And everything from stunt work to just having fun over the Dead Sea and other unique places that I've jumped around Europe and other parts of the world. So
Wow, fantastic. I love that. You mentioned the stories in your head, and that just made me think of when you were helping guys with women, and they tend to have stories in their head too. And there's seems to be a real connection there. And can you talk more about the stories and the connection to the being paralyzed and not being able to do something?
absolutely. Ultimately, on a psychological level, it is a protection mechanism. It's a threat that's coming at you psychologically. You're not really aware of it. You don't know what to do with it. You enter fight or flight mode. And when that experience pans out negatively, we start building stories about how it's dangerous for us, how it's bad for us, how it's a threat, how it's not for us. And we end up shrinking our lives. Now, some of the more common problems that guys run into that are dealing with, or problems that they're dealing with guys that I work with are, um, not feeling confident, not feeling like they're good enough, um, low self esteem, having having issues taking risks. Anytime we step out of our comfort zone, cliche as it sounds, we start to grow. The brain starts to learn a new way of living, a new way of operating. The nervous system starts shifting and allowing more capability to handle tension within itself. And as it gets more and more comfortable, the brain starts to realize, hey, this is actually safe. It's okay to, for example, hang off the outside of the airplane. And it's okay to walk up and approach a girl that you find attractive. But when guys start out from a place that is filled with childhood trauma, bullying in high school or school in general, um, rough family life, bad relationships, things like that, they start compounding stories about what women are about, what dating's about, what approaching's about, etc. And these little primal kind of core stories start developing and manifesting in other little insidious stories. So it's kind of like a tree. You've got this one core experience, and then it starts branching out into all these other experiences. And if you don't get that reined in and taken control of on a core level, those stories will start compounding and create a very solid belief that's really, really difficult to get over. It takes a lot of cognitive conditioning from that negative bias to the positive side of that bias to make that switch. And it takes time over, repetition over time to make that cognitive bias shift, which is why a lot of guys get very frustrated with personal growth work because they're not sticking with it long enough to actually have that repetition become the norm.
Yeah, and that can take a while. And I've noticed too that if you don't track it really well, you can make the progress and think you didn't.
Correct. And that's another unique thing about personal growth work that guys need to really pay attention to is documenting where they were either mentally or writing it down or making videos for themselves stating, hey, I'm here. I did X, Y, and Z work. These are the results. And doing that like once a month, maybe.
Mm-hmm.
Looking back at the end of the, when you're at the end of the year, looking back at the beginning of the year, how much have I really changed? And if we don't document that, we're never really going to realize, unless we're having very tangible physical experiences outside of us, to believe that we've actually changed. So it's nice to document that because we're with ourselves 24 hours a day, and our subtle shifts don't feel like anything, but over the course of time, the changes are massive. And one of the biggest things that a guy could look out for is if he's doing work is people who interface with him. Are they saying, wow, you've changed, you look different, your energy looks different, you look happier? When you hear those types of pieces of feedback from the public or friends or family, you know you're doing something right.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I know I experienced it myself still. I'll think, I've done all this work for 20 years and wait, I still have this problem, and nothing's happened. It's like, but then wait a second, well, there's this and this and this and this and this. So it's like, no, there's been huge shifts, but for some reason we're just used to the way we are now.
Absolutely. And that's the trickery of this type of work where it changes on such a subtle level sometimes that it's just normal. It doesn't feel like anything shifted when it actually has. Now, some of the deeper, like trauma-based work that I do, guys will go into what I call an exorcism because it looks like an exorcism. They'll be like shaking on the floor, be convulsing. That's the nervous system reprogramming itself, nervous system resetting, and becoming more comfortable with processing what it's been repressing. And for somebody that doesn't know how to do that work or has never seen that work, it's a terrifying experience. Everybody goes into that place. And the other big thing is for guys to get their aggression out. So many guys have been neutered because of the world we live in, because of the media that has been shoved down many men's throats, the aggression that men naturally have. That needs to get expressed some way, shape, or form through sports or combat sports or martial arts, whatever it may be. But some of the exercises I get guys in some of my workshops, some of the shadow workshops specifically, can really unlock some serious rage that's been pent up in guys. And when that comes out and releases, it looks scary to the average person. And it's very scary for them because they're like, what's happening to me? This isn't me. But that huge shift, that huge release the next day they're a whole different person. The person that is more naturally who they truly are, not the mask that they were wearing before.
Yeah, it's really powerful. I know that in my journey, I've really, when I was younger, I just used to just blow up with rage periodically. And now it's a little more contained. I go have my space and I blow up with rage still. But
Teenage angst, you gotta love it.
yeah. So yeah, many decades later, it's still happening. And but it's just there. It just builds up. And there's kind of the social niceties, and you're behaving kind of gently to people. I know that I do that, especially with clients. And I don't know, there's no that's just not coming out in normal interactions.
Exactly. And primally, us as men, we need, our aggression is what we use to protect ourselves, to hunt, to protect the tribe, etc. I mean, that aggression is hardwired in us, and if we don't have an outlet for it, it leads to some pretty bad things. um you had said something, I wanted to comment on. You just said something, I can't remember what it was. It was really interesting. Oh, about the social niceties, right?
Mm-hmm.
um People get this idea that masculine men aren't nice. Well, there's a difference between being nice and, standing up for your boundaries and not being walked all over, right? You can definitely be nice and still have firm boundaries. That doesn't
Mm-hmm.
mean that you're the toxic masculine male that everybody loves to throw that label on men these days.
Yeah, I find that guys who have very clear boundaries are, it kind of gives them the freedom to be more kind and more generous to people, because they don't end up in those things of, when people are kind of nice, they can give away too much and then get angry at the other person for what they've given to them. They were trying to be nice to somebody, but not really taking care of themselves. And
Absolutely. And
yeah,
that's
and
that's a big nice guy thing, right? Not taking care of yourself, always pandering, catering, um, kowtowing to like the other person. Oh, not me. It's that's a classic nice guy, right? To your point, when you're setting boundaries, when a guy has clear boundaries set for himself of what he's going to tolerate, what he's not going to tolerate, it's like your own backyard. You know what's in that backyard. You know all the grass, you know where the tree is, like everything. And it's very easy to play within the confines of what you know. And if something is outside of that, something comes over the fence, it's like, this doesn't belong here. I don't like this. This isn't what I'm about. So you throw it back over the fence, i.e., holding up that boundary that you're putting up for that person in front of you, which allows you, to your point, to be nice about everything because you know the space that you command. You don't have to put on a show because something triggered you. You don't have to put on a show because someone that did something that you didn't like. It's okay. These are my boundaries. I either like it or I don't like it. And I don't have to be triggered about it because I know my backyard. I know my space. I know what I command.
yeah, I've noticed people tend to get upset and maybe get triggered because they feel the other person is forcing them to do something, but it's because they're not sticking to their boundaries, or maybe don't know what they are. And I also found it for myself, like a shift with people that I already knew. When your behavior changes and you start to assert your boundaries, they can take it as something against them. In fact, a lot of people will just take normal, healthy boundaries, even some you've just met, as something to do with them. And that can be a bit challenging. But
Absolutely. I agree 100%. But having those boundaries allows you to filter the good people in and out really, really quick. One thing that you said there about, friends or family, when you assert your boundaries. A lot of younger guys, when I work with them, college age guys, they're kind of going through this process where they've left the family. They're now starting their journey as their own man and haven't fully decoupled from like the family to find out who they really are and then kind of return back to the family. That creates these consummate little boys, these man boys that are out there. Um, so guys want to start their own journey. They want to break away, or they should be breaking away from family, developing their own life, their own boundaries, their own way of living, doing things, thinking for themselves outside of the family construct, developing that, playing with it, practicing with it, and then going back, with his new set of rules to the family. And the family will treat him differently and he will treat the family differently, but they'll start to see that he is now his own man. It's this nice growth that every man should go through and separate himself from the family, because it's a good kind of safe way to see how you can develop out your own way of life, have a trusted source, the family, kind of test you against it without the risk of like true abandonment. Now, depends how radical you get with that. The family could just kick you right out the door, but ultimately in a healthy environment, they're going to see that he's out doing his thing, developing his own self out, come back with his own new set of rules and ways of being. There's going to be some tension back and forth until that dynamic irons itself out, and that will elevate his masculine. It'll elevate his status within himself as his own man. And it's really important to understand your own personal values, the way you're thinking, what matters to you, what doesn't matter to you, because all of those kind of data points start creating these boundaries that you're talking about, so that when things come in, it's really hard to upset somebody that is grounded, has boundaries, who knows who they are, because they see the shit for what it is and it just bounces off and they just continue on the path.
Yeah, I've it's helped me too to be. There's this tool that they use sometimes, the drama triangle, being able to see those drama things. I think there's three different aspects of it, but being able to see that, and it has helped me, and I know allowed me to help other people be able to see kind of when they're stepping outside of that, when they're not having their own boundaries. So when they're being too generous or trying to rescue people.
Absolutely. Definitely. And I like that you brought up drama, because when we think of drama, we think of movies and typically women when it comes to drama. Women are emotionally dramatic. Well, men are emotionally dramatic too. And men have to realize when they're being a drama queen. And I have some clients that come in who are they are just ruled by the drama of things, and that ungrounds them, that breaks down those boundaries, and they become prey to the ebbs and flows of life and the drama of life, get caught up in it and never really land, never really do much. They never really get anything accomplished that they want to accomplish, because they're getting blown around all over the place because they're addicted to the rush, the chemical rush of drama.
Yeah, it's very, and it's hard to see. I mean, I myself in my own journey I had a big breakthrough with drama, being able to see that I was stepping into it when I didn't realize it. And that was actually at Fearless years ago. And it really shifted things to be able to see, oh, I'm victimizing myself. I'm trying to rescue someone. I'm being bullying because I think I'm being victimized, and it's just really powerful to be able to see that. And I've noticed it was for me, and I've seen it with other people. You're just blind to it. And you can't see it. even if someone shows it to you, you still can't see it. And kind of getting someone into that. Have you worked with people to kind of help them see things like that?
Absolutely. Drama is just as tricky as pride, in my opinion.
Mm-hmm.
They're both very insidious. They're both very sneaky. They're both very under the radar to a degree. I mean, we have the stereotypical, very like wild drama person,
Mm-hmm.
right? We have the stereotypical, very like puffed up, proud kind of emotion, right?
Mm-hmm.
But as far as those two go, it takes a lot of self-awareness to catch all of the little tiny triggers that will trigger the pride, that will trigger the drama, whatever it may be. And depending on how bad the guy is addicted to that experience, it could
Mm-hmm.
take some time to break that and really see what all of the triggers are for the pride emotion or the drama experience, whatever it may be. It takes a lot of work sometimes a lot of very subtle work, constantly watching the energetics of his body, watching the way he's talking, how he's challenging people or not challenging people, how he's playing the victim, not playing the victim,
Mm-hmm.
giving too much, not giving enough. Like it's just this really wild, very subtle manipulation all the time when it comes to the drama experience.
Yeah, that's where the term passive aggressive comes from. It
Absolutely.
can
Yep.
really, yeah, it's crazy. It's very insidious, like you were saying. Um, so,
And
what
just really
did
quick, one thing I wanted to
Mhm.
say. Sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off. I just
Oh,
thought about this. It's just something that popped in my head that I've seen over and over again. When it comes to the drama, when it comes to the passive aggressive nature that you just talked about,
mhm.
those kind of go hand in hand. And from what I've found with most of the guys that I work with that are really bad with that, it has come from the emotionally erratic mother in his life. That's what it's come from. From all the guys that I've really worked with deeply on that and have seen and looked at the history, it always goes back to the emotionally erratic mother, sometimes the mother that is making the son the surrogate husband as well, putting a lot of pressure on him. So he gets wrapped up into the wife drama of being a wife, even though she has a husband. It's a very weird dynamic, but that does create a lot of that passive aggressive, dramatic, more feminine nature.
I have seen a lot of that too, and both of those things even together.
Mhm.
So, yeah, that could be really challenging. And to rewind just a little bit, said something about, I guess back to the stories which are connected to the drama we're talking about, because I think that's has to do with a lot of stories, uh, seem to be connected to emotions. Like all the stories are connected to an emotion. And maybe you can speak a little bit to that, because that, I think, it's hard to have kind of grounded confidence when these emotions are getting brought up by these stories.
Absolutely. So the story keeps the emotion locked in. And the more stories we develop around that emotion, the core emotion, the more stories we develop, the bigger that emotion gets, the bigger we're addicted, the more we're addicted to it, the more it's a part of us that's we don't even realize is there. And we don't understand how the game is being played and constantly manipulated. We're masters at manipulating ourselves as human beings. It's unbelievable what we can do to ourselves.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, so each time we have a story that's created and tied back to that root emotion is going to get stronger and stronger and stronger and stronger. Um, like a perfect example of kind of stories and the woman who always finds the physical abuser, right? and a woman who is, we're going off topic here a little bit because I work primarily with men, but women do this, and this is a good example of it. She has lots of stories of love, of what love is, what love's about. But at the end of the day, it all comes back to abuse. It all comes back to I'm not good enough. I'm not worthy of true love. I'm not worthy of being cared for, unloved unconditionally. My love comes through abuse. And what she will do is create countless stories about this guy, that guy, this experience, that experience, and it just builds and builds and builds and builds to the point where she can take a man who has never abused a single woman and trigger him enough to abuse her when he has never done that his entire life. Because the woman who's used to being abused feels unloved if she hasn't been abused. To her, the abuse is love. And there's a lot of emotions tied to that. A lot of that's like low self-esteem stuff. But guys will do this too. They'll find, we were just talking about drama. They'll find like a very dramatic woman, a woman that's always creating chaos because in the lifestyle that they grew up in, maybe with an absentee father, emotionally erratic mother, emotionally erratic sister, grandmother, aunts, whatever it may be, didn't have a really solid masculine role model to say, hey, look, we don't act like this. He's going to go out and find women that match his mom's emotional chaos, drama, etc., and bring her in repeatedly into his life until he works on himself and understands where that actually came from.
Yeah, we repeat these patterns, we repeat these stories in our lives. And one trap can be believing that the outside world is responsible for your life circumstance.
Very much so.
Blaming other things, the economy, whatever it is you blame. And I think until you take responsibility for it yourself, you're stuck.
Absolutely.
How are you going to move?
It all starts internally, and it's energetics, it's energy, it's vibration, it's harmonics, whatever you want to talk about. Like on quantum level, they've already proven this stuff. When this, especially like quantum entanglement stuff, like when this does something here, 10 million light years away, it's doing the exact same thing. So it starts internally with us. It starts with our belief systems. It starts with our nervous system. It starts with our own mind. How do we feel about ourselves? How do we see ourselves interfacing in the world? Are we powerful? Are we weak? Do we see ourselves as intelligent or not? Do we see ourselves as emotionally available or not? Deserving or not deserving? And a lot of this starts seeping into a man's life at a young age, which now if it's been a rough childhood, he's dragging that through his teenage years into his adult life. And so he has, 20 years of baggage, so to speak, that of traumatic experiences that he hasn't worked on. And now he's going to bring this into his adult life and try to interface with another woman that has done the exact same process. And we wonder why divorce rates are so high. We wonder why, so many people have struggle in relationships, and there's so much, non-monogamy stuff, and people just getting sick of each other's because people haven't taken the time to work on themselves to kind of clean out things that have bothered them from the past.
Mm-hmm.
And a lot of people, if you're not in the personal growth space, if you will, people don't realize how subtle trauma can be. It's not this big thing that happens. It's usually very underneath the radar, very subtle, and it seeps more into the subconscious mind than the conscious mind. And that's why we create these patterns over and over and over again.
Yeah, that's a great point. I've seen that trauma isn't just these big childhood events. They're happening all the time, every day. Little trauma, little trauma, little trauma, little tiny one, or they can be. And what I've seen is that the trauma isn't the event that happens, it's our failure to feel the emotion and have the awareness of what's going on.
Absolutely. I mean, we can look at this in like PTSD, right? There's
Yeah.
people that can be in the exact same traumatic experience. One person will
Mhm.
develop complex PTSD, the other person, nothing. It's
Yeah.
how your nervous system, how your brain processes, compartmentalizes, how much emotion you attach to things. That's the difference between somebody developing those issues and not. It's pretty interesting. Pretty interesting stuff.
Yeah, yeah, it really is. Yeah, I've seen it. There's different types of people. There's some people that are kind of, how to describe this, kind of pre-emotional, if that makes any sense. They're not really aware of all these emotions. They don't really have huge, complex emotional activity going on within them. And so they can kind of sidestep trauma a lot of times because their emotions are not something that really bother them or something they're really connected to deeply. Whereas other people are in a place where they're connected to these things. And so they can be more, they're more sensitive and they can be affected more by these things. And I think for people like that, it's even more important to have that awareness and to have that ability to feel them. So it's kind of like if you're either you don't have to feel them or you do. And if you do, then you do. You can't be the person who has to feel it and then not feel it. You're not the other guy. Um, Developmentally, this is what I've seen with like kind of in the space of masculinity. Kind of there's some guys who are in the place of having to feel the emotions, kind of maybe going backwards and thinking they want to be like these other guys that don't have to. It's like, but you're not that guy. You can't go backwards if you know what I'm talking about.
Exactly. You,
Yeah.
you you are who you are. You process the way you process, unless you do a tremendous amount of work to learn how to process a different way. And there are people, like you're saying, that aren't as tied deeply to their emotions as other people. There's people that are extremely tied to their emotions and at the whim can switch personalities, moods like that. And that's a little
Hmm.
scary too. It's just as scary as the psychopath who's like walking down the street, watches somebody get run over by a bicycle and said, yeah, let's go get that dinner. You know, just
Yeah.
zero registration versus the other person who's just like falling next to the person on the sidewalk that's been hit. And it's like, oh my God, I'm dying. This is going to end my life. That's the overly attached
Hmm.
person to the emotions. And, I, I always try to take the middle road, right? As Buddha says, take the middle road, right? There's a time to be sensitive and there's a time to not care. And I think with healthy emotional regulation, you can decide and understand consciously, hey, do I really want to invest a lot of emotion into this experience or not? Sometimes we don't have a choice. We just get hit with it. And if we know that we're an overly emotional person, at that point, it's like, hey, let's go get some help. Let's work through this so that it doesn't develop into some other psychiatric issue or PTSD or whatever it may be on down the road. Now, if you're a person that doesn't really need to manage their emotions that much because they're not that emotional, well, that's a little bit of a different story. And there are those people out there, um, but not everybody can say they're this way all the time because we don't know what we're going to be affected by, right? Like there's people that can go to war and do a lot of killing and come home and have dinner like it's just a day at the office because that's just what they're programmed to not react to versus somebody else that couldn't even handle that. They're going to break down on day one.
Hmm.
So we can condition our minds to to respond in different ways. military is a great example of this as to why, they train the way they do is we don't want to be emotional on the battlefield. We want to be logical because this is a
Mhm.
chess game. It's not an emotional game that we're playing, and then we got the other people who they they need the emotion. They need to feel something. They need to connect with something. It's very interesting.
Yeah, I think that's a good point. The battlefield, because some people are well suited to that, and some people aren't. Some people you can never train them enough. There's just nothing you can do to get them prepared for that. Um, but also, I've seen people who are on the other side who are well suited to things like that, and usually things don't bother them. But then just one day something will, and they'll have the experience of being more sensitive. So you never really know.
Absolutely. Some people are very good at compartmentalizing during those traumatic events. And then one day the switch just gets flicked and it is what it is. And now they're in a world of shit and they don't know where it came from. And that takes a lot of time to go through that. Ultimately, kind of the way I look at it is it's better to have emotions and just work through it as life hits you with them because it's going to build your resilience to what really matters and what really doesn't matter. It's wasting your kind of time getting emotional about certain things. It's better to just kind of be in that middle road, and you know, it's a nice experience to have emotions. It's not, we don't want to be walking around as like psychopaths and zombies. So
Hmm.
the emotion is a good thing, but we need to understand how the emotion affect us personally, and every person is different.
Yeah.
So we need to understand the way we operate and get the help accordingly so that it doesn't lead to a very detrimental place in the future.
Yeah, it's good. And I think what I've seen is it really is when you have to deal with some of these things, especially if you're more sensitive, have to deal with you end up developing a complex toolkit, and you have all these skills that maybe someone who hasn't had to deal with it doesn't have. And if something happens, they're starting from scratch. Yeah, really starting from zero.
Yeah, I
Whereas,
really like what you
yeah,
said there. People that are interested in themselves and their own personal growth, they're developing out a lot of coping mechanisms, a lot of tools in their toolbox to handle a lot of chaotic situations that happen in life. And I mean, let's face it, life's getting crazier. It's not getting less crazy by any
yeah,
stretch of the imagination. So that's a really good point that you brought up is having all of these tools in the toolbox. Oh, I can use this for that, that for that. Working with professionals, of course, and getting help that you need. Um, you know, men's suicide rate is just through the roof in around the world, not just here in the U.S. but world, because what have we always been told as men? Stop crying, shrug it off, not that bad, etc. Like
be a
that's
man.
be a man, right? Be a man. If you want to truly be a man, sure, there's a time to shrug it off, but there's also time to say, hey, I need help. You know, that's a really solid guy who can do both of those things. He can shrug it off until he knows like, okay, I'm in a safe place, like I truly need help, and he goes and seeks that help. That is a really solid guy right there. Unfortunately, because of the messaging that so many men have been taught, this is why our suicide rates are so high, because why would you ever go get help, right? Just drink it away, do the drugs, whatever it may be. And, you end up killing yourself because you haven't been told that men who are solid actually reach out and get help.
Yeah, a lot of the I think societal stories are, that's global, are real disservice to men.
Absolutely.
The stories, and it really puts people in a untenable position where they have to take their own life because there's no way out. And when in reality, I mean, humans have a society and a culture. I mean, from tribes on up, they've always supported each other. That's how society works. That's how families work, and that's how it should work. But I think there's been like a kind of fracturing in society of support, a kind of I see it in the Western countries, especially, there's kind of this collapse of the extended family, collapse of community, collapse of the commons, uh, and people don't have anywhere to go. It's really, if you actually have an extended family, that's a huge blessing, because that's the way it should be. That's the way it's always.
Absolutely. 100%. And slowly over these years, we just saw the masculine role model just kind of fade away. And yet men are the ones who have literally constructed the world that we currently live in and have always been the providers and protectors. So, there's a lot of frustration with men these days when it comes to the messaging, and now we got social media, which is even worse for men and women. We see the divisions, and I have theories on these divisions and why they're happening, and I don't think it's coming from within the U.S. I think there's other actors out there that are driving the downfall of the American family and the unity in America, because if we're divided, it's easier to conquer. So I completely agree with you about the um, collapse of the family. We saw kind of, even though Married with Children, that TV show
Yeah.
was kind of like coming onto the scene when, at least from my perspective, we're hearing about more and more divorces happening, families breaking apart. And, that show Married with Children comes on, it's just kind of like Alice, he's just like, oh, whatever, don't care. And like Peg's just being the overly emotional, dramatic woman. And the kids are just kind of left on their own to fend for themselves, like minimal interaction with the family. And I was just like, when I look back on that, I'm like, oh, that was the precursor to what we're living to today.
Mhm.
We're having these fractured families, like you're saying. To have an extended family is a blessing. Like, I'm blessed because I have that. I have a big family, and I love family holidays and things like that. It's really, really important to reconnect with that tribe. Um, just with the business here with Limitless Brave, like, I'm building a community of men, and a lot of these guys, I love hanging out with them because they're like-minded. They're working on themselves. They're wanting something better for themselves. So kind of seen the departure and the fracturing of all the community and things like you're saying. I don't really see that we're coming back yet. I hope for it, but I don't see that really happening in any way. I think on smaller scales, we're seeing that, right? We have, the trad wife stuff coming back online with influencers who are doing that. You're hearing more and more about the family unit again. It's very sparse and very, localized in certain areas, but it's not. I don't see it as a turning point in any way, shape, or form just yet. And one of the things that I hope to do with the work that I'm doing, and I have done it because there have been several marriages through the work that I've done, which is great, is to get men to see their role and their job and the reality of it, and what's not really reality, because so many men have so many distorted views about what their value is, what the reality of them is, what they should be doing, shouldn't be doing. They're constantly getting mixed messages, and it's really difficult for men. And I really feel for them. I was very fortunate to be brought up in a very traditional family, very traditional masculine role model, very traditional feminine role model, and see that dynamic work very, very well. And the same with all the other families that we interacted with as well. And I had another very fortunate event growing up. Is there was only one family that my family interacted with that had one girl in it. Everybody else had all boys. So I grew up in this boy, hyper masculine
Mm,
childhood. So it was just boys all the time, fathers. We're all wrestling, fighting, riding dirt bikes, doing our thing.
mhm.
Just a very hyper masculine culture. And even the fathers were very, very masculine, very, very rough, gruff. Um, you know, not afraid to lay a hand on you if you got out of line. So that's that. I see that as a blessing because it's really shaped me in my mindset about what a man should be doing. The traditional family values, kind of like what you're saying, you know, even if you don't want to use the word family, just the tribe, the community, right?
Mhm,
What are men doing for the community today?
mhm.
And most men, when something happens, unfortunately, like we look at the situation in New York City, Daniel Penny tries to help save somebody's life, and he's being prosecuted for it. I mean, it's just insane. So why do men, what kind of messaging is that sending men who are told, oh, you need to be the protector, you need to help out? Oh, well, if you do, we're going to prosecute you for it. I mean, it's just nuts. You can't be sending men these types of messaging and expect them to do the opposite. It's just not going to work. So what
Yeah.
happens? An incident happens. We have men just with their cell phones now filming it, and a very few men willing to step in and risk something to save
Yeah.
somebody else's life. And it's not a great place to be as a society.
No, it's not great. Not at all. Boy, you brought up so many things. So much there. I can't even. So we got 10 more hours. So yeah, I mean, there's which piece will I pick? The well, let's go back to like the men and women and what's happening with men in the culture and how it's changed. And the way I see it is kind of from the somewhat of David Data's perspective of the three stages of masculinity, and the nice guy stage being the second one. And you can really see in historically kind of the nice guys, though they seem to have been around in ancient Rome, starting to increase in the 20s and 30s, and then just to an incredible degree to where almost all guys are nice guys now, vast majority. And I think that's where you get that married with children thing of the guy being weak, because it's reflecting the actual society. So sometimes, well, it goes back and forth. The art or the shows influence the society, but the society creates the shows, right? Um, and I think, and then where the guy becomes the butt of the joke because he's this powerless father. It's like, because that's what was really, that's what's really happening. They
Absolutely.
exaggerate it for comedic purposes. And I see that so the nice guys are abdicating kind of their male role and their masculine role. And what I've seen is the women having to pick that up, and then they're being the feminine and the masculine, and the guys being what? Neither. And
Exactly.
so it's and there's these huge problems with men, but what I see as kind of dangerous is a lot of men blaming women for the problem, and like it's the Me Too movement or whatever. And it's like, well, here's my one quick thing on Me Too movement is that these feminist movements, this happens with all movements. The movement gets started by grassroots people, and then it gets co-opted by some large group with usually nefarious purpose, usually just making money and
Sure.
amassing power. And then they take it, like with the Me Too thing, it's like the feminists and the people that came up with it was a great idea, actually. It was a really good concept, but then it was taken. And as soon as the companies got a hold of it, they just use it for an excuse they didn't want to get sued or whatever, just firing people and just really creating persecution where that was not the idea originally. But then you get the men in the culture blaming the women for doing it when it's not the women, it's the companies that are doing it. And I just, a lot of things are unclear to people of even the dynamics of what's happening. And but I think overall it's just an evolutionary process we're going through, and men are developing and changing, and they're changing into men that can have, like we were talking about before, that can have emotions, and that need to develop the skills to be able to deal with them. And we can't just behave like we're the alpha male first stage guys when we're not. And that doesn't work. We need to do the work.
Exactly.
Yeah. We all need to do the work. We can't blame women. We can't blame the past or evolution or whatever, or God, whatever you want to blame. But, just as men need to take responsibility and do the real work,
I think the key word there is blame, right? We live in a society where we can blame everybody else for our own failures, our own weaknesses, our own incompetence, right? This is one of the most litigious countries in the world. There's more lawyers here than any other place in the world. So we get this mindset that we can just blame everybody else for our own problems, and that's not right. When you take self-responsibility, radical self-responsibility, even on like a spiritual and energetic level, you really start to see the way you're causing your world to be effective and positive and growth oriented and good, or it just going down a dark hole. I mean, we are responsible at the end of the day. Now, are there outlying things that happen? These black swan type events? Yes, they do. But even within those, somebody that takes responsibility, that really, owns up to their experience, their life here on earth, is looking at that like, why is this happening? And they will always find a positive as to why something was something bad happened, in that gave them, a new direction, a new view, a new understanding of something.
Yeah.
So to blame others is just complete weakness. I mean, unless something was maliciously done to you, sure, like I understand that, but just to blame others of your own incompetence, ignorance, and incapability is just laziness. It's unacceptable. You need to step up and take responsibility for everything that you do, all of your actions. And we live also in a world of very self-gratifying, I want it now, convenient. And so we don't think about the long-term effects of some of our actions, some of the things that we do, until we get hit with the issue. And I see that happening more and more and more and more as things move faster and faster in society. Things become more convenient. We can fulfill that instant gratification that we want, and we don't think far enough into the future. At the end of the day.
Yeah, and if you're just focused on that, then it's going to be hard to, lay the groundwork for something that needs to be built slowly, whether internal or external.
And that's the thing, is the growth process sometimes is very slow. Most of the times it's very slow. And it's all that really, really slow work that compounds into something amazing overnight. And that is the frustration that so many people moving into personal growth or trying to get better are going to have to face, understand, and work through, because it's literally like watching paint dry on the wall some days when you're doing this type of work.
Yeah.
And is anything actually happening? The answer is yes, it's coming, but it takes a while. So patience is another attribute that, men should really be looking at when it comes to bettering themselves, growing themselves, just being a better man in general, being more well-rounded. Patience is an attribute that's, I think is overlooked these days.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. I think that what's really helped me lately, if I can share this, is that I've begun to look at the work from a perspective of, this is what I want to do. this is who I am. I'm the type of person that does this, and I'm going to do this. And I have no expectation that anything will ever change. And even if nothing changes, I accomplish nothing in doing any of this, I'm still going to do it anyway. And if I have to do it till the day I die and nothing gets done, then that's what I'm going to do.
It's a great mindset.
That's it. So that's just what's happening.
Yeah,
And,
you're really setting a nice baseline there for growth ultimately. Because like if this is my baseline, you have nowhere to go other than up.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah,
I like that. I like that.
Yeah. Yeah. So yeah, what's the next one? What about we haven't talked about confidence yet.
Let's talk about it.
Yeah, so when you work with guys and they are challenged around confidence, or they believe they're challenged around confidence, like how do you approach that with them usually?
So depending on what they want to work on, whether it's dating, their business career, making money, or just the confidence to go live an amazing lifestyle, travel, for example, really start with what happened to get to this point. What happened in childhood? What happened in school? What was family life like? I'm really looking at a long timeline with a lot of guys that I work with to understand where they arrived or how they arrived to where they are. And then we start breaking that all down. And usually when I go through that kind of lifespan type of uh, analysis and start picking out things that really register to me as like an emotional hit when they speak about it. First is to get the stories kind of dissolved, get the emotional attachment to those stories dissolved, get the nervous system calmed down, get them to a more kind of centered, grounded place. And then once they're there, well, now we can introduce the triggers because the nervous system has now been trained to respond differently to those triggers that were potentially happening. And so we'll introduce triggers a little bit at a time, keep ramping that up until they can handle so much more of the emotional tension or physical tension when it comes to whatever it is that they're doing. So, we can take approaching, for example. I have guys that come in who want to learn how to approach, or they've never approached a girl in their life, or they're just terrified. Well, first, I'm going to bring a model in. We're not even going outside. We're going to start in a safe, contained environment, and we're going to work through. I'll have sometimes the guys stand 30 feet apart from the girl if he feels comfortable, and then I slowly introduce the nervous system to more and more and more tension just through a physical proximity exercise. And then once that's good, then we go into communication. We would go into physical escalation, sexual innuendos, and on and on and on and on. Just keep ramping up that tension with him so that the nervous system gets very comfortable with whatever it is that he's trying to do. Now, for example, I worked with a client who last year was at the bottom of his sales team. Had very little confidence. And through grounding practices that I taught him, some mental reframes that we did about the way he was thinking about sales and his team, the way they viewed him. He current day leads his sales team and just closed a $1 million deal. Now, a year ago, he was scrapping for money. So he just closed a huge deal. And what I do, when confidence, at the end of the day, what is confidence? Confidence is a boatload of experience. When we have a lot of experience in anything, we can be very, very confident. But if we don't have the experience, well, our confident meter is very low. So I'm looking at experiential exercises and ways to introduce experience to the client so that his nervous system gets more and more ultimately confident, which is ultimately more settled down, more grounded. less logical thinking, less logical mind games that he's playing with himself. And
Mm-hmm.
that's how we build confidence. But ultimately, at the end of the day, all confidence is just a lot of experience.
That's good. That's good. I've actually never heard it framed that way. Exactly. But yeah.
Well, if we think about it in sports, right? We can have, when you're a little kid and you're playing t-ball, you
Mm-hmm.
don't have much confidence.
Yeah.
So to make it to the major leagues, we're playing through elementary school, middle school, high school. We're playing through college. Hopefully we get to like a farm team and we're playing in the minors, and then we hopefully get drafted it. But through that, the kid that started, that dream of being a pro baseball player, he doesn't have the confidence that a pro baseball player has. And so over time, he's built that experience to be confident in the game that he's playing, especially at an extremely high level.
Yeah. It just takes time.
It does.
Time
And,
and exposure.
here we go back to instant gratification world that we live in. Nobody wants to put the time in to actually get good at something. I had a client in here the other day. Like, it was just fascinating to me to work with him because he was so extremely serious about everything that we did. He was so focused. His sole mission was to literally extract everything out of me that he possibly could for the time he had with me. And he was just there. He didn't care how long it took. We worked like 12-hour days. It was wild. And
Wow.
it was just really, really nice to see that level of dedication and commitment to every nuance of the training that I was taking him through.
That's rare.
It's very rare. Very
Wow.
rare.
Yeah.
It was impressive.
Nice. Yeah. I know when I'm working with somebody, it's like somebody who really wants to do it, who's actually committed, who's actually dedicated, because so many people think they're not really. And
No,
that seems to really make all the difference.
you have the people that are serious and they'll spend time with you and they really appreciate your knowledge and your help. And then you have people that feel good because they went and did something for themselves, but realize that it's going to require work. And rarely, if ever, do you see them again.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. That is my experience as well.
Yeah. it's kind of par for the course.
Yeah.
I am really proud of a lot of my clients because they do stay with me a long time because they see the value here, and I'm pretty multifaceted about what I can teach and build confidence in masculinity and really all areas of a man's life that he really cares about. And
Mm-hmm.
then, we can get into some more weird and esoteric stuff as time goes on. But I really try not to introduce that at the beginning because the guy doesn't care about that stuff. The only thing he wants is a result. And I really pride myself on getting that result. Once he's gotten the result, he's happy. He trusts me. He's like, okay, cool. You know what you're doing. Like, I want to do more work. And then now we can start getting into the more ethereal, esoteric, energetic, weirder stuff
Mm-hmm.
because he's at a place that he can start to see now. Oh, hey, okay, yeah, I can see how the way I feel affects everyone around me, my coworkers, my family, my girlfriend, my wife, whatever it may be, to
Mm-hmm.
the point that it can change the difference of the way a cashier views you, who might give you a free item or not.
Yeah.
It's very interesting. I did a workshop where I had guys shift their energies, and they had to bring back as much free stuff as they possibly could simply by asking and, you know, feeling good about what they were doing. And guys were bringing back all kinds of stuff.
That's great.
It was really fun.
It's amazing. Yeah, doing some of those exercises, I remember for years of just doing approaching, and that really built with me and with my clients, it really can build a lot of confidence and a lot of really shift things. And what I've found with doing things like that, things in public, cold approaching people you don't know, strangers, is that it's really possibly one of the hardest things in the world to do, right? And the level is so high to even do it at all. When you transfer those skills then to any normal social interaction, all of a sudden you're a superhero, you know? You
Exactly.
can be mediocre at doing approach at best, but at a party, you know, you're amazing.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, that is
So,
it. It's a perceived high stakes game when you're cold approaching.
yeah. Yeah.
It definitely is. But are the stakes really that high? No. There's no real danger there. It's just all perceived. But
Mhm.
a lot of guys, they believe it's a real danger. And in the like I said in the beginning, the brain tracks it as a real threat, a real danger. And so getting that fight or flight mechanism to shut off, to slow down, to not care as much, to see, a woman that you don't know as a non-threat is
Mhm.
it's a good thing, but it takes some practice.
Yeah. Yeah. Definitely takes some time. So you mentioned results. So I know it said something on your website, but I know you like to work this way to just give people, practical, down to earth ways to do things now. So share some of that. Like, how do you do that?
I try I basically, when guys are starting out with me, we don't get into too much theory. We don't get into too much like ethereal, esoteric stuff. I'm really looking at how he is processing the information I'm presenting. Start off very kind of logical, linear, step based for the most part. Depending on where he's at, I might start a little bit more advanced with that because I need to see that he's grasping the concepts that I'm teaching him, that they're registering, that he understands, he can track, and start getting some result. And then we ramp it up from there into more things that actually are theory or invisible to see. It's just a feeling.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, I try to keep it as simple as possible and really dumb it down to very fundamental, basic understandings of concepts and ideas. That whatever situation they might be in, I'm like, okay, well, if just trying to think of a situation, right? So if going to the boss is really that's a no go,
Mm-hmm.
but you might be able to talk to the middle manager about something and kind of get some feedback about whatever your problem is that the boss needs to hear, but you're terrified to go to the boss. That's going to be one step toward the end goal. That's not as much of a threat. That's not as much of an issue. That doesn't set off the nervous system that much, and doesn't create more stories to fill that fear. So when you get to the big boss, like it's not that big of a deal. So I very slowly take guys through whatever it is they want to work on. I take them through that process, whatever it is. Everybody's very unique, everything I do is very individualized. So I can't say that there's a cookie cutter pattern to each guy because there's not. Um, and slowly move them on down the road at a pace that is actually painfully slow to them, but I can see that the nervous system is actually tracking it the right way, that he's actually retaining the information. He's not freaking out as much as he was before. And so that slow integration into whatever it is that he wants to work on is the best way to practically get a guy from point A to point B without having to kind of put on a dog and pony show about theories, ideas, concepts, because there's a lot of that stuff in the personal growth world. I mean, you can You can throw a rock in California and hit somebody that can talk about, some ethereal, esoteric, theoretical concept. And
Hmm.
while people love to get lost in that stuff, does it produce a result for you? And for most men, the answer is no. Now, there's some people that, you know, might think they're getting something, but when I really look at what they want versus what they're doing,
Hmm.
they're not moving in the right direction. So I use a lot of common sense, a lot of things that guys already know, but aren't believing, if that makes sense. They know things, but they don't believe things. And so it's getting that belief system to work in the right direction for them is another way that I'm very practical about things because I don't want it to be overly complex in any way, shape, or form because if they're coming here, life's already complex for them. Life's already difficult. I'm not trying to add any more to that. I'm just trying to remove as much as I can so that they can start going in that right direction. Then we can add all of life back in, all the complexities and things like that.
Yeah. So like getting them maybe out of their head into their body.
Absolutely.
Something.
I work with a lot of engineers, a lot of very analytical guys. Some of the first things I want to do is get them into a grounding practice right away. Get them, like you said, out of the head, down into the body, feeling the body, experiencing this machine that we live in that most of us never pay attention to.
Yeah.
Unless you're an athlete, unless you're doing yoga or lifting weights, you're moving the body and really paying attention to what it's telling you.
Hmm.
Now, once we're down here in the body, more grounded, that gives our brain a break from overthinking, overanalyzing, and we start to rely more on our instincts. And through our instinct, which sometimes can be wrong depending on how much experience you have listening to your instincts, um, it's been proven that instincts can be very wrong. But the more you get comfortable with your instinct, very certain, very specific situations and venues and things like that, the more you can trust it because you've now tested it a lot and like what's the truth and what's not the truth when it comes to these instinctual hits. And getting an analytical guy to trust that is a very difficult thing. But once he does and he learns how to play with his own analysis and his instinct, that's an easy day for him moving forward
Yeah,
because
absolutely. Yeah.
because he's
Yeah.
not creating more and more stories about things. He's now like, oh, what are my instincts telling me? Where am I being told and directed to go?
Hmm. Yeah, that's what in my training, following your intuition is an incredible skill, and it's never going to be perfect.
No, no,
It's never going to be
it's
perfect. My
it's 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 a nice blend. You have to blend both the instinct and the logical. It's got to be a blend, or you can get
yeah.
away with just listening to instinct, but you need to have a good track record of instinct proving right to really
Hmm.
just blindly trust it.
Yeah, and it takes years to really kind of build that muscle because it's been atrophied in most of us, and I think these are exact figures, but what I've heard or experienced is that roughly around 80% accuracy is about what your intuition can have at its highest if you're incredibly talented and been doing it for years.
Yep,
So it's having that flow, having that the pineal gland connected to your frontal cortex so that your frontal cortex is still steering the ship, but the pineal gland's telling it where to go.
exactly.
And yeah, so getting those two to work in concert, it's been, it takes time to learn.
It does. It's like with any skill, you have to develop it, you have to work on it, you have to test it in real time. Um, I listen to my guttural instincts, my instincts a lot. But what are my instincts? It's a lot of the five senses that are being input into me, and I'm just processing that information and feeling for what's the most instinctual way to go or thing to do. And I've done that a lot in my life, and so I feel very confident in my instincts when I lock into them. What I find is that I need to go out into nature sometimes to refresh them. Something that I enjoy doing is just being away from everything so that I can refresh and reconnect deeply to my instincts, myself.
Yeah, I find the same thing, and to really take a break from screens for a little while can help.
Yes. As we
Because the
sit here
screen, yeah,
talking on the screen.
dive in. This is like the diving into the screens to do some work and then
Yep.
jump back out again.
Absolutely. I agree with you 100%.
Yeah. So yeah, I've been trying to minimize it as much as I can because there's a lot of work to be done. But yeah. So as far as transformations go, do you have a story about? I think maybe you did give us one, but do you have a story about a big transformation of someone you worked with?
Big transformation. Well, I have one young guy that came to me. He's from a culture that has arranged marriages, and he he had never had sex at all. He was still a virgin, well in his mid-20s. His family was putting a lot of pressure on him to get married. He didn't want to because he hadn't had sex, and he, just wanted to have this experience before getting married.
Mm-hmm.
And he was just even having trouble understanding women in general, and really worked with him for a long time. He ended up meeting some girls before he, had his wife brought to him, and yeah, he ended up getting married. He's super happy. He's still with her. He was just really grateful for the work that I had done with him. It's a great story to go from, mid-20s, like never having sex, never been with a girl, and not even talking to women, to having the pressure of your family telling you have to get married. It's arranged marriage, all of these things. I couldn't imagine living under that kind of pressure, and wanting to understand, like, what am I getting myself into. So it was just really really amazing, and I had a lot of respect for him to come here and say, hey, this is my situation, can you help me? I think that's a really great story. The story about the guy that he's at the bottom of his sales team now, was $1 million deal. That's another fantastic story. And just recently, I had a client. He's working on his dating life as well. He had met a girl from Turkey um, in one of my workshops, and they hit it off. Um, they've been talking on the phone, and he had dated in his own country, but he never considered the idea that he could hop on an airplane and go visit her in Turkey. And through a little bit of work, I basically convinced him. I said, hey, man, you like this girl. She likes you. Go visit her. Go spend 3 days with her. Have a great, 3-day date. And ultimately, that's what he did. And that shifted his perspective about what a man can do when it comes to dating. If he has a little bit of money and he has the time, the world's your oyster, and you can date country to country if you want to. Now, he's a European client. It was a short flight for him, like 2 hours, but people do limit their dating pool. And if you have the time and you have the resources, it's nice to expand that pool to the world if you want to, and you can. So that was a big learning experience for him that I was super proud of him for that, because he was at first when I mentioned it, he's like, oh, I don't know if I can do that. And then through working through some of his stories, he did it. He's like, it was one of the highlights of his dating career so far, because his dating career has not been that stellar, due to some stuff that happened with his mom kind of berating him and, telling me he was a bad boy because he had a girlfriend in school when he was 9 years old. It really had messed with his dating life. So to go from that to, oh, I can fly to Istanbul and have a date with a girl, like that's a huge jump for most men. And so that's another little story I'm super proud of as well.
That's great. So let's a couple more questions, and I'll maybe we can wrap up in a little bit here.
Sure. Good to me.
So what's just one message you want men listening today to walk away with?
Your masculinity is your key to your success. And when you really develop out your masculine to a very well-rounded version of yourself, there's not much you can't do, because people respect you, you respect yourself, you understand boundaries, you understand what you're about, what you're not about, you understand how to interact and interface with people, uh, you know how to play the business game, the corporate game, whatever it may be. You're confident enough to go live an amazing lifestyle and experience things that you want to experience. So, I mean, ultimately, it is masculinity at the core, which is a thing that controls your experience here on earth. I mean, it's as you develop that out, you get more confident, um, with your own masculine traits and energies, experiences, what the masculine does and doesn't do according to you. Um, it's an easy day. I think guys make their life way too much uh, more difficult than they should, because they're not tapped into that primal masculine instinct that they should be, and that causes a lot of problems in their life.
Yeah, that's really important. Do you have like something, like a challenge or something to help guys maybe just break out of where they're in right now and start some momentum?
So I have something on my website. It's the masculine assessment. So if you go to my website and take the masculine assessment, it's a little assessment that I created. It kind of gives you an idea of, your masculinity score, right? It's like, how do we know where we are if we don't test something to kind of figure out what's going on? So I have guys do that. They like that. We talk about the results after typically. So that's one thing you can do to, kind of get a bead on where you are compared to, where you were. I have several clients that take that assessment over and over and over again, and they post the results in my circle community, and they're like, oh, look, I grew over the past 3 months. So doing that assessment, that would definitely help. And yeah.
And that's at limitlessbrave.com.
Yes, limitlessbrave.com. And if you go to I forget where it is, you just click, I think it's under free stuff. I think that's what it says on the website, free stuff. It has the masculine assessment there. So just kind of getting a baseline of where you are. And the way the questions are structured, it'll give you a pretty accurate reading on where you fit in all these categories.
Okay, yeah, I'll put a link to it in the description.
Cool. Thanks, man. Appreciate
it. Guys, you can look in the description and you can click on that link. So where else can listeners get a hold of you? How can they connect with you? Going to that website?
Sure. They can go to limitlessbrave.com. All the socials are at Limitless Brave. And if somebody just wanted to email me, they can just email me, dave@limitlessbrave.com. If they do go to the website and they sign up for my newsletter, they get an automatic invite to my circle community.
Yeah.
So there's 130 some guys in there right now, and a bunch of testimonials, and there's some free PDF stuff, and there's a full discussion board in there, so guys can get in there and ask questions and get some help as well.
Okay. Yeah. This community can be really, really helpful. That can make the difference. So
It's super important.
Yeah. So anybody listening, that seems like a really good thing to try.
Yeah, definitely. And the fun thing is, guys who haven't come to workshops yet, they kind of see other guys. And when they come to workshops and those guys are there, they have a bond now in that workshop with another guy. And they're like, oh, cool. I know you from the community. You can we can hang out. And so guys have formed these relationships with each other all over the world. So when, I have a workshop here in the US or in Europe or wherever, and guys come to that event, they're like, the family's here. Yeah. It's like they already know each other. It's pretty cool.
Yeah. That's very cool. Yeah. That's great. All right. Is there anything else you want to share? Yeah.
I don't know. I can't think of anything right now. I mean,
Okay.
thank you very much for inviting me on your podcast. It was awesome to be here and talk about this stuff. Definitely passionate about it. I've been doing it a long time, and love helping guys. Love seeing them change and having those aha moments. It's a really rewarding experience for me. Definitely.
Yeah. Thank you for being here, Dave. And I think we had a great conversation. I really enjoyed it.
Yeah, it was fun. Yeah, you had some great questions, man.
All right. Thank you.
All right, James. Thanks so much. I appreciate it, man.
Thanks.
James Ferrigno here. And it would be great if you guys could subscribe, like, follow whatever platform you're seeing this on, because that really helps me be able to continue the podcast and be able to get the good guests and provide you with the help that you might need. And so if you can do that, that would really help us out. Thanks a lot.